Good afternoon, everyone. We'll start in just a few moments. This is just a quick voice check. Thank you. Well, good afternoon, everyone. I hope you're all keeping well, and thank you very much for joining us on this preparing to deliver the Level 3 qualification in wall and floor tiling. We're presenting this from home, therefore I apologise in advance if there is any unwanted background noise or any delays in the slides. There can sometimes be a slight delay as we click forward. You will receive an email with a copy of the presentation following the recording of this webinar and a certificate of attendance. You can access the recordings to all previous webinars and register for upcoming webinars on our Skills for Wales website. You'll also receive an email with a link to a survey. We'd be very grateful if you could take the time to fill in this survey, as your feedback is very important and valuable to us. So let's have a look at what we'll be discussing this afternoon. So we'll briefly mention why the transformation of these qualifications is happening. We'll look at the content of the Level 3 qualification, the structure of the units, a summary of the assessment. We'll mention the employer confirmation guide. We'll show you learning resources that are available. We'll discuss the next steps. And then at the end, there'll be an opportunity to ask questions. So please type in any questions that you may have in the questions tab on the right-hand side of your screen during the presentation. So as we move on to our introductions, I'll talk you through today's panel. So we have myself, David Pye, one of two lead technical advisors for BSc Engineering. We have Jason Howe, Technical Advisor for Construction, Ian Roberts, Technical Advisor for Construction, and unfortunately not available today, we have Harry Lloyd Benyon. So, why the transformation? Excuse me. So in February 2018, Qualification Wales published the Building for Future report, which was a sector review of the qualifications and the qualification system in construction and the built environment in Wales. Some of the qualifications Wales outlined findings were inconsistent assessment practice, some areas of learning not effectively assessed, learners needed to deal with a range of tasks to be able to problem solve, qualifications not meeting skills needs of Wales. There was some need to reduce the complexity of the system. There was also a need to improve coherence with clear pathways. Progression routes needed to be clear through the framework and onto higher education. Thank you, Ian. Next slide, please. On this slide, it shows the type of questions you may have. I won't go through each of the points on this slide, as we've mentioned many of these before on presentations, but it's good for your own recap. Just have a glance back over. We do have access to an FAQ document. If you do have further questions on any of this, please don't hesitate to contact us direct or drop a question in our questions tab. Thank you, Ian. So let's have a look at the actual transition arrangements. This slide is really helpful in showing which qualifications are available and routes which are open for learners. So the first one showing a learner doing the foundation, then onto the apprenticeship. Alternatively, if the learner hasn't got successful employment by then, they can move into a progression qualification before then moving on to the apprenticeship. There are options for broad level 1, so if a learner isn't ready for foundation when entering at 16, they can go on to a broad-based level 1, the 6219 or the 7201 or similar. Or a learner may get an apprenticeship direct from school, in which case they can do the apprenticeship route direct, and they will do a core qualification which mirrors a foundation, but with 1 trade area. So there are various options and opportunities available there. Again, please do ask any questions on that if you have any. But I would now like to pass you over to my colleague Jason, who'll take you through the next few slides. Thanks, Jason.
Thank you, David. So what we're going to do now is just take you through a little bit of the qualification content and have a look at how the units are structured within our qualification handbooks as well. So the first slide we're going to show you next, this just gives a bit of a recap really with regards to the qualification journey for learners. So obviously we have on the left hand side we have the foundation and the core being part of the apprenticeship program, and the core and the foundation are the exact same qualification, except learners would only do one pathway. With regards to the foundation, obviously learners do two pathways, and those are listed on the screen there. We have construction and BSc combined for the foundation, and that is delivered by City and Guilds. Below that, we have the pre-foundation and the level 1 qualifications, and we have our 6219 construction skills and the plumbing and electrical 7201 version as well. So again, those are managed by City and Guilds. With regards to progression, with regards to construction, obviously that is at with City and Guilds. The BSc is with our colleagues at EAL, similarly with level 3 as well. But for the progression, we have the construction pathways available there, and it's just not long been confirmed that from September 2022, learners will also be able to register against wall and floor tiling for progression. Obviously not now, but from September 2022 this year, learners will be able to register on that course accordingly. Moving on to the level 3, again, all of the construction pathways do sit with City and Guilds and BSc with our colleagues at EAL. And for the purpose of this, we've just highlighted the level 3 wall and floor tiling qualification on screen there. As we move it on, just to look at the rules of combination. So with regards to all of the level 3 construction pathways, they all have the same 6 common core units, and those are units 301 to 306, and we'll have a look at those shortly. Then you've got your trade-specific pathway, which is wall and floor tiling, and for the purpose of this, wall and floor tiling has 5 units. There are 3 assessment methods which my colleague Ian will cover shortly, but in order for the learner to be certificated, they must achieve at least a pass grade or higher in those 3 assessment methods to be successfully certificated for this qualification. With regards to the JLH, the total is 765, but that also includes 57 hours for assessment. And within the JLH as well, that can be delivered either within the training provider's environment or within their industry setting also. So, you know, you can have a blended approach on that format. Moving on, please, Ian. So just looking at some of the unit numbers and titles in JLH with regards to the core. So these are the 6 common core units, so 301 down to 306, and the relevant titles, and a line JLH as well. And the JLH is bespoke to each unit in line with the content, the learning outcomes, the criteria, and the range and delivery content as well. So it's all specific to each individual unit. And you can get all the information on the qualification and the units, etc., on our Skills for Wales website. Next slide, please, Ian. Looking at the trade units now for wall and floor tiling. So we've got the 6 common core units listed at the top, total 180 JLH. And then we have the 5 trade units for wall and floor tiling listed accordingly. 242, 43, 44, 45, and 326, with their titles and their appropriate JLH assigned accordingly. Then you've got the 57 hours for assessment, again demonstrating a total of JLH for 765 hours. Next slide, please, Ian. So that's sort of just giving an overview of the qualification and how the qualification is structured. Now we're going to look at how the units are structured. And if you're familiar with City and Guilds qualification handbooks, you should see a sort of a familiar standardized format with regards to how these qualifications have been written also. Next slide, please, Ian. So what we start with on the structure of a unit, we have the learning outcomes as we have naturally anyway, and the assessment criteria. So they're pretty standard and generic across any qualification handbook. And you'll be familiar, if you are with City and Guilds qualification handbooks, that we also provide a range as well. And the range just contains a little bit more information about the breadth that's required for a specific assessment criteria. But what you'll also see, which we've newly developed, is what we call delivery content, and that just takes the range and gives more depth of content, and we're going to cover those shortly. Next slide, please, Ian. Thank you. So just looking at one of the common core units, for the purpose of this, we've picked on unit 301, Understanding Construction Practices in Wales. And within the qualification handbook, you've got the unit number and title at the beginning, followed by the GLH, and then a brief description of what the unit is about. With regards to these descriptions, these can be used, they can be pulled off, put in schemes of learning, or given to learners as an introduction into what they're going to be learning, and a little overview of what is contained within the unit. Following the brief description, you then start to move into the learning outcomes. And for the purpose of this, we've just taken out learning outcome 2, which is understand safe working practices. As we move it on, what you will now see, next slide, please, Ian. What you'll now see is you have your learning outcome, which is the same, and then you've got your criteria. Then beneath your criteria, you have your range, and then this is the new part. So the delivery outcome covers the depth. So it takes the range and the criteria and breaks it down into a bit more detail. And this is really useful if you're preparing schemes of learning or preparing lessons, or just generally planning, a number of lessons aligned to a certain learning outcome, etc. It is useful and hopefully supportive in supporting tutors in their planning and delivery of this qualification. Next slide, please, Ian. What we've done now is we've just to demonstrate the familiarisation and standardisation across the units. This is one of the trade units, so unit 231, wall and floor tiler core knowledge. Again, you've got your unit number and title, the aligned GLH, a brief description of what the unit is about, and then you move into your learning outcomes. So that's fairly standardized with regards to the core, and this is as well. So as we move into a bit more detail, again, you've got your learning outcome and you have your criteria, and then you have your range, and that is pretty standard and generic. Again, your delivery outcome is also provided for each criteria, again, covering the depth of content. And all that we wanted to showcase on here is that it can differ depending on the content of what needs to be showcased. So for the purpose of this, it's been done in a bullet point format, where previously it was done in a written sort of sentence format. But hopefully you find both methods useful and suitable when planning and delivering your sessions and the qualification to your learners. And hopefully, they'll get all of the relevant teaching and learning knowledge and skills and understanding they need in preparation for any assessments and progression towards successful completion of the qualification. Next slide, please, Ian. I'm now going to hand you over to my colleague Ian, who's going to take you through a summary of assessments. Thank you.
Yeah, thank you, Jason, and welcome, ladies and gentlemen, like I said previously. And I will commence by going through just the brief summary of the assessments, as you can see. The Level 3 qualification in wall and floor tiling is assessed using 3 assessment methods. And as you can see, they're no different to what we've seen previously in the foundation and the progression, as it follows the same format throughout as we go through this. The on-screen assessment, which is multiple choice questions, is externally set and externally marked. And this is an overall weighting of 20%. You will see that this will include test 1 and test 2, which I will come back to later on in further slides. The practical project, covering the trade area that they are working towards, this is carried out within industry, set in agreement with the employer and assessed by the assessor employed by the training provider. This will then become externally quality assured and has an overall weighting of 60%, leaning heavily towards the practical skills element and the various knowledge and understanding that goes with that. The professional discussion is new, and it's new to all of us moving forward. It's one externally set and externally marked, and it will be marked by a trade specific and carried out by a trade specific member of the awarding organisation, and as you can see is an overall weighting of 20%. We will be going through each method of assessment in the up and coming slides, but before we do move on, I would like to reinforce we have an assessment pack detailing the requirements of the assessment and can be downloaded from the Skills for Wales website, and that's the address that you can download them from. Within this slide, we're going to go through in a little bit more in depth now of each method of assessment. The on-screen assessment contains two tests, Test 1 and Test 2, and can be taken at any stage in the assessment process. Although this is on demand and completed at any time, it is advisable to complete prior to the professional discussion being carried out. Test 1, this contains 45 questions, and the learner will have 70 minutes to complete. The learner may have, however, completed during their second year, or a learner who may have completed their progression qualification within this trade area, and will have achieved this as it is the same test. If you have a learner that's come across from doing a different trade area, then they will still have to do Test 1 again, because there will be different questions relating to that trade area. Test 2 is completed in their final year and has 22 questions, and there's a timing that the learner has to achieve this in is 35 minutes. The practical project, this is made up of 3 elements, and it's very similar to what we have, like I've said previously, into the foundation and progression, whereas you've got the planning, the performing and the evaluating are the 3 main components. The project is carried out in the realistic working environment. They can select from a number of tasks that are outlined within the assessment pack and cannot exceed any more than 4 work-based tasks, which are clearly outlined in the practical tasks, as you can see on the website, or you will be able to see, I should say, sorry, on the website. The assessor employed by the training provider will carry out all assessment visits, which will include a minimum of 3 site visits, and the site visits have got to be clearly linked to the actual project itself. The professional discussion will be carried out by a member of the awarding organisation and will be occupationally competent. This will be carried out in a one-time sitting and can be either virtual or face-to-face. The professional discussion will last no more than 40 minutes and will be graded passed to distinction. The learner will need to demonstrate of their knowledge, understanding and performance from the occupational standards relevant to their trade. And these are the occupational standards that have been set by industry. They will also be required to reflect on the practical project they have completed within their professional discussion. The professional discussion can only take place once the learner has completed their project and the employer confirmation, which we will be going through shortly. Now I'm going to touch on the online assessment. They will contain engaging multiple choice question types and styles and are online with results received immediately after the assessment. Test 1 may have been achieved previously if the learner successfully completed their progression qualification within the same trade area. If not, then as I've said previously, the learner will have to retest on the Test 1. Here you can see on the right of the slide assessment information for Test 2 on the sample test. and the sample test is in the assessment practical project, or the sample test project that's on the Skills for Wales website. The test pass mark is 15 correct responses out of a total of 22 to achieve a pass 1, which is the minimum pass. The pass marks for the current tests are still to be confirmed. The reason being for that is we need to see a certain amount cohort of learners going through so we can identify and then set the relevant pass mark. So these pass marks you see here is only for the sample test only. We're now going to cover in more detail the practical project. The learner will have 12 hours to complete all of their planning, and this may include up to 4 tasks or projects that they'll go out within industry that's in line with the project that's guidance within the assessment pack. They will then have 30 hours to complete the performing and a further 12 hours to complete the evaluation of the tasks that they have included within their project. Just a gentle reminder that the project cannot include any more than 4 work-based activities. The 30 hours will vary depending on which trade area that a learner will be working towards. So please don't get confused if a colleague from another trade area says that they have got additional hours. The 30 hours is set for the wall and floor tiling project. As I mentioned previously, further information can be located on the website within the practical project section of the assessment pack. So please keep this at hand when you're referring to and trying to seek additional guidance as you're working through. With regards to the professional discussion, here you can see a brief overview of the content and timings. The units we have identified, along with the learner reflection on the practical project. This should help you in supporting the learner in being prepared to meet the external assessor. Project documentation can be available during the professional discussion to help support the learner in making reference to. And as you can see, the discussion will have to be recorded and captured in a secure GDPR compliant way. The timing of this is 40 minutes and it's got to be completed in one time sitting. An additional 5 minutes can be allocated to complete the final question. There is no minimum requirement that a learner has to go through the professional discussion. It's just the maximum timing. If a learner completes in 25 minutes, then that can be stopped at that moment in time. And just before we do move on, just to reinforce that the professional discussion will be conducted by a competent external assessor from the awarding organisation. Excuse me. We are all aware by now that there is no NVQ within the level 3 qualification. Learners, however, still have to gain the skills and knowledge within industry to carry out and fulfill their role within the construction industry. Within this slide, we can make reference to the employer confirmation and how this will help support the learner in meeting the qualification requirements and attaining their CSCS card. The guide which I will go through provides guidance to employers and training providers and how the occupational competency statements set by industry have been met. This documented when completed will provide employers, federations and industry the confidence that the learner has provided evidence of meeting the occupational competency statements. The overall qualification will be graded from pass, merit through to distinction, and this will help differentiate the achievement between learners. Provisional grades for the practical project will undergo internal and external quality assurance. And the professional discussion, the final grade will be awarded by the external assessor who will confirm the grade. but yet the overall final grade will be issued by City and Guilds. Throughout this process, learners can resit assessments or make a resubmission when a learner fails to achieve a pass grade in any of the assessments. Guidance on the resit, etc. can be found in the assessment pack. What I would like to do now is just to provide a brief overview on the resit and resubmissions. Taking the on-screen assessment, although there are no limits to the number of times a learner can take, you should provide additional learning prior to the retake. When a retake is taken, the learner can still achieve the full marks and grades available. Regarding the practical project, here you can see the opportunities, and rather than having to resit the entire project, they can retake the criteria that they failed. For example, regarding the planning, if they do not meet the threshold pass, then they can resubmit the criteria that they failed, which will be reassessed within the resubmission. Regarding the professional discussion, when a learner fails to successfully achieve, then they are permitted to resit and must resit the whole professional discussion. So there is no part retake, it's got to be the full submission, resit, sorry. Once again, on a resit, a learner can achieve the full range of marks, and any resits have to be booked via walled garden for the professional discussion. Excuse me. Before I begin the next section of slides, I'd like to take this opportunity to say thank you to all stakeholders for their valuable contribution and feedback we have received, and that has helped the consortium in shaping what I'm about to present on the Employer Confirmation Guide. Employer confirmation is part of the learner journey and will help strengthen the relationships between employers, centres and the learner. This is only part of the learner journey, and the process will enhance the employer role in the delivery of the new apprenticeship qualifications in the construction and built environment sector. As we are all aware, the learner will spend a considerable amount of their time in the realistic working environment. And the purpose of the confirmation sign-off is to capture the activities and provide stakeholders, including trade bodies, confidence that the learner is occupationally proficient and discovered the full range of the relevant standards to allow the learner to progress to the final part of their assessment process, which is the professional discussion. Although there is no NVQ within the new apprenticeship model, a learner still has to provide a range of evidence that allows the centre to check the employer confirmatory sign-off is valid. And then upon successful completion of this robust assessment process and the confirmatory sign-off, the learner will then be in a position to attain the relevant skills card. We are aware that the employer confirmation process is new and may raise a few concerns. To help support this, the consortium will and are currently looking at ways of providing centres and employers with instructions and the requirements for completing this process. There is already information within the Employer Confirmation Guide, but we'll also be further communicating this at our centre and employer events that we are currently planning and scheduling, which will be set for May through to June and July. And these dates and how to register will be on the Skills for Wales website. And as we normally do, we will send you the relevant update out when it's time for you to be able to see that information and register accordingly. Here we can see how working collaboratively, we can support the learner along their journey that they will require to move forward and progress to the final assessment of that assessment process, the professional discussion. And as you can see on the slide, by working together, employers and centres will provide opportunities that will allow the learner to gain valuable industrial experience and complete the activities outlined within the employer confirmation guide. Whether it be 1, 2 or 3 employers, they will work with the learners throughout their apprenticeship. Hence the reasons why we have made provisions on the various forms for more than one employer to work on the documents. The main reason we've done this for as well is due to the shared apprenticeship scheme that happens throughout Wales. Work-based learning providers and centres will work with employers to guide and support to ensure the occupational competency statement log is being completed correctly. And as you can see, the pieces start to come together. And this is through working that collaboratively together to ensure that learner journey does run smoothly throughout. This is to ensure that the learner is prepared for that final assessment. As you can imagine, this hasn't been a smooth journey, as change is always and sometimes very difficult to accept. We have engaged with a considerable number of stakeholders, including micro businesses, medium to large contractors, and federation, including colleges and private training providers. Within this slide, you can see a front page, the contents and a section that is contained within the employer confirmation guide. Whether it be 1, 2 or 3 employers, they will work with learners throughout their apprenticeship. Hence the reasons why we have made provisions on the various forms for more than one employer to work on the documents. The employer confirmation guide will be trade specific and can be located on the Skills for Wales website under the trade heading. The document will be a writable PDF and can be completed either electronically or hard copy. And the employer confirmation is the responsibility of the employer and the learner working collaboratively with the learning provider. Although not part of the qualification, this has to be completed prior to the learner moving forward to complete their final assessment, which is the professional discussion. I would now like to pass you on to David, who will continue through the next set of slides.
Thank you very much, Ian, and welcome back, everyone. I'll take you now through some of the resources and then talk a little bit about some of the next steps. So if we can move on to the next slide, please. So our first step to access information is normally the Skills for Wales website. From there, you'll see under the Qualifications tab a list of sectors. Click on the sector and scroll down to the bottom tab under Qualification Documents, and here you'll find 2 documents, the handbook and secondly the employer confirmatory sign-off. The handbook contains content along with various requirements for the qualifications, so it's always the best starting point. You can find various other supporting documents on this website which cover the qualifications from foundation through to the level 3 qualification. So it's certainly well worthwhile familiarising yourselves with the website and all the various documents. Please do contact us if you're struggling to find any of the documents or any information in the documents, and we can help direct you. Please remember we've also got a questions tab on this webinar. Please make use of that questions tab and contact us with any queries that you have, and we'll try and answer them throughout, and if not, at the end of this webinar. Thank you, Ian. So here we have the delivery planner. Many of you should be familiar with this from previous webinars and from using them to support the delivery of the foundation qualification. The delivery planner is fully adaptable and equally as useful for delivering the level 3 qualifications. Please allow time to consider your delivery and timings, and if you wish to use this document, please feel free to share your thoughts and your plans with us as a team, because we're happy to go through this with you, have a look at your own planning. You may have questions and queries or issues that you've identified. and we want to make sure we're available to support you with that. So please do make use of this supporting document and share your thoughts with us. Thank you, Ian. As previously promoted, we have a suite of sector books from Hodder Education. To support the new suite of qualifications, Hodder have created free mapping documents to support staff and learners in accessing the related information. Please contact Thomas Stossard direct for more information. His email details are on the screen now. And despite there being many free resources and opportunities for you as centres to request inspection copies of these textbooks, I'm told by Thomas just the other day that very, very few tutors have contacted him to request these free documents. So please do make a note of his email. It will only take you just a few short moments to send an email and ask for information on the free textbooks and mapping documents. They've also got e-books, e-learning, a full suite of support for the foundation. So please make use of all this material, and much of it is free to centres as well. Thank you, Ian. So let's have a look at some of the next steps. Here we can see that centre approval actually commenced in Jan 21 with the foundation and progression, and now closely followed by the level 3 qualification. Provided you haven't already gained centre approval, the following slides will help provide a broad overview of the approval journey for centres. As we are aware, these are brand new qualifications and an offline application has to be completed. If not already done so, these are available on the Become a Centre section of the Skills for Wales website. It's for all qualifications for both awarding bodies. On completion, it should be forwarded to skillsforwales.quality@cityandguilds.com. This section is also contains centres FAQs around approval. It's really helpful and useful. Thanks, Ian. Centres can expect a decision about approval within about 30 working days of completion of the application. Please note separate approvals must be submitted for sub-centres. Centres do not need to invent new documentation for your IQA purposes. Many of the planners and such like documents you use for IQA will be adaptable just for these new qualifications. So it shouldn't mean you're reinventing everything once again. And again, if you've got any queries, please let us know. Use the questions tab to ask queries about this. Thanks, Ian. So on this next to final slide, we will see some future training events, many of which have now taken place, and we're on to the final few. We will be hosting some for the BSc qualifications, which are run by EL, and we're just waiting to confirm some of the dates on those now. But as you can see, holding many trade-specific webinars. These are all recorded and they are held on the Skills for Wales website. So if you're not able to join any of these live, you can always listen back to them at any time, or if you forget something, you want to go back to it, please make use of all these recorded webinars on the website. So I hope you found this webinar useful so far. We will pause just for a brief moment whilst we open up your questions prior to working our way through your answers, hopefully. I will in a moment drop in a link to the survey as well, so you can possibly start doing that straight away if you've got time. It won't take very long at all, but please have a think about all your questions. Just make sure you can find the questions tab that's there on the right hand side of your screen. Hopefully you can also see the chat tab, which I'm just about to put in a link to the survey. So if you have a look on the chat tab, hopefully you can see those. So is there any questions on this, or even while we're here we can answer things on the foundation, the progression, any questions at all about Qualification Wales, new qualifications? Might not be a question, might just be support, might be something that you want extra confirmation on or support on, maybe some feedback on how it's going so far that we can discuss. Just want to open it up to anything at all so we can support you as centres and providers. After today, when you get a copy of these, please share them with colleagues. Please share our email addresses with colleagues. and please share the Skills for Wales email address, which I think we can probably go to now, Ian, whilst we're waiting for some questions to come in. So what you'll see on the next couple of slides is just really a call out for your feedback and support and questions to come in. So if you please contact us on the first of all, your feedback's very important. That's a link that I put in the chat and we will follow up with. But if you think of something after this webinar that you want to feedback on, you want logged centrally, you want to formally log this, please use the email address coming up on this final slide. If we can click the next slide, so you'll see skillsforwales.customer@cityandguilds.com. Any feedback, queries, questions, please do contact us direct. Please make sure everyone, all your friends and colleagues at your centres, all have these contact details so you can contact us direct and we can help support you. We want to make sure we're very visible and very available for all the centres. So please do stay in touch with us. Well, I'm not seeing any questions so far, so hopefully that's a good sign and we've answered everything and you've no queries and you're confident at delivering this. If there's, I'll just give you a few extra moments to think of any queries. Whilst we do that, just want to say a big shout out to the presenters for today, to say thank you very much to Jason Howe and particularly Ian Roberts, who pulls together much of these presentations and organises these webinars. Well, both Ian and Jason do a lot of hard work behind the scenes to put these on and develop them and sort out the sector support. So thank you to those, and thank you to the rest of the team, Tasmin and Harrod and our development teams who have helped bring us to this point so far. So thank you very much to all of those members of the team, and also thank you to you, because you know this journey is only possible with your contributions as well. So we do appreciate you taking the time to join us. I do see that there's a question coming in, so thank you very much. Good afternoon. Are there any teaching resources for the apprenticeship short progression route as there is for the foundation in wall and floor tiling? So I know there's been debate about and some movement on that. I don't know if you'd like to pick this one up here.
Yes, David. Yeah, there's some regarding the foundation. There's looking at the wall and floor tiling units. They should already be on the website for people to download and look at already, workable. Regarding the progression, there'll just be like the unit contents that we've got at the moment that's on the progression resources. There's nothing specific that on the same content or the same lines as what the foundation is. The main reason being is that on the Qualifications Wales wanted us to focus more on the foundation and moving forward from that really. Textbooks, we've no textbooks in the wall and floor tiling, but what is happening is BARC, the Building and Construction Heads, have been asked to put a proposal together to QW, to Qualifications Wales, regarding a proposal to develop to develop resources moving forward. And our understanding at this moment in time is that BARC are putting that proposal together. They will then be submitting that to QW, and then they'll be given X amount of monies to share the development of the resources for the progression and any level 3 content that they believe will be required. So that's what they'll be doing. What we've got though, unfortunately not on wall and floor tiling, I fully understand that. We haven't got any textbooks at this moment in time. And I can't see in the very near future if there will be any. So I do apologise over that. But it's just the timing of things moving forward. But as I say, BARC should have something ready in the foreseeable future. I know it's probably not the answer that you're wanting, but I'm afraid that's where we are with it.
Thank you very much, Ian. Now, I have put in Thomas's email address. I'd still recommend you contact Thomas because they work for a publishing company. If many people are contacting saying there is a demand, then it may encourage them as a publisher to create something. So they'll work very much on demand. So we just, you know, if you want to contact Thomas, and you can also ask for some of the foundation books and e-books and the tutor resources through the book. You know, just open up a dialogue with Thomas. He's very nice guy, very helpful. So it's worth dropping him an email anyway. So there don't seem to be any other questions coming through. It's just a final chance to maybe ask some more questions.
If you could mention, David, about the future support that we're going to be having, David, providing, I should say, regarding CPD events and surgeries and things like that on the level 3.
Yeah, certainly. Yeah. So it's a really good point, actually. And so I see another question, but I'll just cover that first. So what we're looking to do is we've been having a few discussions recently about the ongoing support for providers. So up to date, we've provided multiple webinars across a spectrum of qualifications and support requirements with those. We've done face-to-face initial visits, then we've done little surgeries where we've been into centres for an hour and a half, just taking questions. And we've also followed up with national CPD events, which are full one-day events on assessment methods and how to carry those out and to support with IQA and standardisation. We will be looking at next year's follow-on support, which will follow a similar pattern, but we may break down the level 3s into sections, which will make it a bit easier, a bit more bite-sized. So what we don't want to do is cover everything all in one go, and it's a bit overwhelming. And we want to cover the sections that you need at the time that you need them. So very much, if we put something on in the early stages of delivery or academic year, it'd be on the early stages of what you require to do as a centre and provider. And then throughout the academic year, we'll build on that, so you're not getting everything all in one go. So hopefully that's what we did this year. This timing of the CPD sessions was on purpose, just before you started your assessment, so it's fresh in your mind and it's available at that time. The earlier sessions were around support and just queries about registering and what to deliver and where to find the information. So that's what we're looking at in future. If you've got any thoughts on that and how you think it would work best, please let us know. So just going to open up the questions tab. Okay, just say thank you really and contact with a few ideas. Yeah, it's definitely worthwhile. You know, Thomas is a really nice guy, and I'm sure it'll be a pleasant 10 minutes or so chatting to him anyway, and good luck with that, certainly. So there's no further questions. Ian or Jason, is there any final points you'd like to make before we close?
Nothing from myself, David. Just to thank everybody for attending the call.
No, just exactly the same what Jason and yourself have said, David. So thank you. Thank you very much for attending, and we look forward to working with you in the very near future. Thank you. That's
brilliant. Thank you very much, gentlemen, and thank you everyone for your contributions. We hope you found it helpful. We look forward to your survey results, and we look forward to seeing you all very soon. Have a great afternoon and a lovely evening, and we look forward to seeing you soon. Thank you very much, everyone.